Welcome back, everyone. This is Dr. Gallenstein. Today we are going to continue with our lectures on demand functions. In last lecture we looked at how a change in how a change in income affects demand. Today we're going to carefully disentangle the effect of a price change on demand. So we're going to carefully disentangle it, and we're going to talk about different kinds of goods, and we're going to really do a very thorough job here of looking at price effects on demand. Okay, so now demand, so we talked about past lecture that we have some goods, coffee and bagels, right? Okay, and then we identified the demand function by solving utility maximization problem, and we say that the quantity demanded is a function of the price of that good, and then it has parameters, the price of the other good, and then income, right? So the demand for bagels is a function of the price of bagels, price of coffee, and then income. Okay, so here are demand functions which we derive from a utility maximization problem. And so this comes from basic demand functions come from consumer demand. So it comes from consumer preferences and consumer decisions. Okay, so that's where our demand functions come from. They are functions that give quantities as a function of prices. So today I want to look very carefully at the issue of how does a change in price, let's just focus on coffee, affect the quantity of coffee demanded. All right. So we might even say, I want to know what is the derivative of the demand for coffee with respect to the price of coffee. I want to know this, and we are going to do a very detailed and thorough job today talking about this. What we're going to find is that this is composed of two different components. We'll find that it's composed of something called an income effect, and it is composed of something called a substitution effect. All right, a substitution effect. And we'll disentangle those and talk about them. So why don't we just go ahead and get started with that. All right, so I think a really good way of illustrating this is by using our standard graph. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with a detailed graph of demand for these goods, and we'll talk about how a price change affects that demand. Okay, so let's draw our kind of standard graph. Coffee and bagels. Okay, and as is typical, we're going to start off with a budget line. We'll start off with a budget line here. All right, so this will be budget line. Let's call this budget. So we'll call it budget. Let's just say L. Okay, and I'm going to be very careful to label some certain things. So the budget line L intersects the x-axis at income divided by the price of coffee. All right, so here, that's where it intersects. Budget line L corresponds to income equals the price of coffee times coffee plus the price of bagels times bagels. And so if we wanted to know where does this budget line intersect the x-axis, what we need is we would set B equal to 0. So if we set B equal to 0, then we have I equals price of coffee times coffee. So this would be how much coffee would they consume if they spent all of their money on coffee, that is they bought no bagels, and we just solve that for C. So then that would be the quantity of coffee consumed if they spent all of their money on coffee. So that's that intersection point there. Okay. All right, and then we're going to assume that we have an indifference curve here. Okay, so we have an indifference curve here, and then we'll say this is point B. All right, and we'll come back. We'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, and let's give ourselves another indifference curve. Actually, let's do purple here. All right. Here is budget line, purple budget line. You know, I might give this one, I might give this a superscript 2. So in a minute when we're done, we're going to talk about this one as kind of being the first one, so budget line 1, and this will be budget line 2. Okay. And all right, and then this one is going to have an indifference curve. Okay, so this will be point A. All right, so let's start there. Oh, and let's give ourselves an intersection point here. This intersects at I divided by, and we'll say price of coffee. All right, so here we go. Let's start here. This is where we're going to start. I have two budget lines. I have budget line that's in blue and budget line is in purple. The budget line is in blue, so they both have the same income level. They both face the same price of bagels, okay? But the purple one faces price PC. There's a purple price, and then the blue one faces the blue price. Okay, and we can see here we can see that the blue price is greater than the purple price. All right, so the blue price here is greater than the purple price. Just to help with our notation here, I might give a little dash mark here to represent this price. Okay, so here we go. So let's start by saying that we're looking at budget line, the purple budget line, so budget line 1, and at budget line 1, so that means at price PC, so at price PC without the little dash, so at the price PC, you will have this purple budget line, and when you have the purple budget line, the agent is able to consume, so they're going to choose a bundle that will maximize their utility, and they will choose bundle A. And bundle A is composed of some combination of bagels and coffee. And that's the one that will maximize utility, so that's what they're going to choose if they face budget line L1, the purple budget line L1, which is the budget line that they will face when they have a price of coffee PC. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to get an idea of how does a change in the price of coffee affect demand? How does a change in the price of coffee affect demand? So let's what we're going to do is we're going to assume that the price of coffee is going to go up. The price of coffee is going up from PC to PC prime. Okay, so the price of coffee goes up. When the price of coffee goes up, the budget line rotates inwards because now they can afford fewer cups of coffee. Because each cup of coffee that they consume costs more. So the budget line rotates inwards, and now they're able to afford fewer cups of coffee, and they will choose a bundle, B, that lies on an indifference curve that's closer to the origin, which means that it will give them lower utility. It's also clear from the illustration that the amount of consumption of coffee at bundle A, which is this dark brown C star, is greater than the amount of consumption of coffee at bundle B. So in this case, what we're saying is that when the price goes up, consumption of coffee goes down. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. And that's exactly what we would expect. We call that the law of demand. The law of demand, that an increase in price results in a decrease in demand. All right, so that's pretty straightforward. But what we're going to do now, what we want to do now is we want to disentangle the different components of this effect. All right, so what I'm going to argue, what I'm going to claim here is I'm going to claim that in fact there are two component factors in the effect of the price on demand. An increase in price affects demand in two ways. So let's go through that. Well, I didn't mean to erase that whole thing. So let me redraw some stuff. So I want to make the case that an increase in price affects demand in two ways. All right, allow me just a moment to redraw my lines here. I didn't mean to erase the whole thing. So okay, B. Okay. Okay, so what I want to argue here is that there are two ways in which an increase in price affects demand. All right, so we said that at bundle A, they choose C, this dark brown C star, and at bundle B, they choose this light brown bundle or quantity of C star. And so we can easily see here, that an increase in price results in a decrease in demand. All right, so that's the law of demand. So we'll just write that over here, law of demand. All right, and the law of demand is basically that as price goes up, it implies that demand, so quantity demanded, we'll just note with C, goes down. Okay, but now this is going to be affected by two factors. There are two components here. There's going to be what's called an income effect, and there's a substitution effect. So let me kind of explain these two effects first. Okay, so the income effect. So what the income effect is that when the price of one of the goods goes up, so when the price of coffee goes up, that effectively means that I have less money available to purchase goods, because every cup of coffee that I buy is more expensive, which basically means that like my purchasing power is lower. And so in a sense, the increase in price results in a decrease in what my income can buy. So that reduction in purchasing power creates what's called an income effect. That means my income doesn't go as far. I can't buy as much with my income. Because I can't buy as much with my income, I will choose to consume bundles that have fewer of the possible goods. That means so the income effect is, as I have less income, I can afford to buy fewer of this bundle of B and C. Okay, so there is this income effect. So if I wrote out my budget constraint, PCC plus P, PBB, that basically, if the price goes up, so if the price of coffee goes up, that gives me less buying power. And if I have less buying power, I'm going to end up probably consuming less of the coffee and less of the bagels. That's the income effect. The income effect is that I have less buying power. But now, if we look at it more carefully, we can think that the income effect is going to be influenced by whether or not a good is a normal good or it is an inferior good. Okay, so we're gonna explore that in greater detail later in the lecture. But the basic idea is this: that if the price goes up, that effectively means that my income is going down. So if price goes up, my income is, in a sense, we could say my income is going down, or the purchasing power of that income is going down. So if the price goes up, the purchasing power of my income goes down. That's kind of like my income is going down. All right, so if my income is going down, how does a decrease in income affect demand? Well, that takes us back to the last lecture. Remember, we talked about the income elasticity of demand. The income elasticity of demand tells us a percentage change in demand given a percentage change in income. So percentage change in demand given a percentage change in income. So if my income goes down, how is that going to affect my demand? Well, it'll be determined by the way in which demand responds to income. To remember that for a normal good, an increase in income results in an increase in demand. So this would be normal good. If you remember, for an inferior good, an increase in income results in a decrease in demand. And so basically, this income effect is capturing that, okay, if prices go up, my effective income goes down. If my effective income goes down, how's that going to affect demand? Well, let's think about it for a normal good, and let's think about it for an inferior good. Start with a normal good. So for a normal good, an increase in price increases demand. Therefore, for a normal good, a decrease in price results in a decrease in demand. Therefore, for a normal good, the income effect, so i.e., the income effect is negative. That means if we're dealing with a normal good, then an increase in the price of that good will have a negative income effect on demand for that good. That means I will demand less of the good now that my effective income has decreased. All right, let's look at inferior goods. For an inferior good, if incomes go up, demand goes down. Okay, so then if income goes down, demand goes up. That means for an inferior good, an increase in the price of that good will result in an income effect that is positive. That means now that I have less income, I will demand more of that good. This would be a situation where the price of ramen noodles goes up, and now that I have less money to spend, I need to buy, I'm inclined, at least in part, to buy more ramen noodles because my income has gone down. All right, so that's the income effect. That's the income effect. All right, so like I said, there are two components. There's the income effect and there's the substitution effect. I'm going to come back and I'm going to revisit this issue of normal versus inferior goods later in this lecture. We'll do it more in detail. This graph here, or this table here that I'm showing you, this table here is going to assume that it's a normal good. So I'm going to illustrate a normal good here in this particular illustration. So we're just going to say we're going to assume that it's a normal good. And we'll come back to this issue a little bit more later. So we have the income effect, which I've just discussed. What are the substitution effect? Okay, the substitution effect is the idea that when I'm making a decision between buying cups of coffee and buying bagels, I have the opportunity to substitute between coffee and bagels. So if the price of coffee goes up, that might mean that I might substitute away. So if the price of coffee goes up, I might be inclined to buy less coffee and more bagels. That means I am inclined to substitute away from coffee. So we started off with the price of coffee and a price of bagels. But now the price of coffee has gone up. Well, if the price of coffee goes up, now coffee is relatively more expensive than it used to be. And so that might incline me towards favoring bagels. I might be inclined towards buying more bagels than I would have before, or I'll be inclined to purchase bundles of goods that have a greater proportion of bagels relative to coffee than I would before, because the price of coffee went up, but the price of bagels didn't go up. That's the substitution effect. I'm going to substitute away from coffee towards bagels because now the price of coffee has gone up, but the price of bagels didn't go up. That is the substitution effect. The substitution effect is always negative. In fact, to illustrate that, I'm going to make it red. Substitution effect is always negative. That means that when the price of coffee goes up, I'm always inclined to switch away from coffee and towards bagels. That means the substitution effect is always negative. It always inclines me towards reducing my consumption of the good for which the price increased. So if the price of coffee goes up, that will always incline me towards purchasing less coffee. All right. Now there's a way that we can graphically represent this. There's a way in which we can graphically represent this. I'm going to represent it this way. If we want to look at the substitution effect, what we would need to do is we would need to, so imagine a situation, all right, here we go. If we want to represent the substitution effect, we need to be able to see how the increase in price affects preferences and decision making in isolation of the income effect. That means we would need to be able to separate out the income effect and the substitution effect. Well, there's one way that we can do that. Imagine a situation in which the price of coffee goes up. So imagine a situation in which the price of coffee, so we use our colors here, the price of coffee goes up from PC, it goes up from PC to PC prime. So imagine that scenario, but then imagine at the same time that the price went up from PC to PC prime, that the agent was given enough money so that despite the increase in price, they were still able to buy a bundle on their original indifference curve. I'm going to illustrate that like this. Imagine that they were given enough money that even though the price has gone up, they're able to buy a bundle on their original indifference curve. Forgive me. Well, that's all right. Let me try. I'm going to try that one more time. That is a very. Let me try to get a real straight line here. That's still not going to work. All right, that's just going to have to work. So if they were given enough money such that, all right, actually that has to be, I got to try again. Sorry guys. It has to be parallel to this dark blue line. One more time, and then we're going to go with it no matter how it looks. All right. That's better. It's improvement. Okay. These two lines should be parallel to each other. So here's the idea. Imagine that the price of coffee still goes up, but the income also goes up. So basically what we're saying is their income is being compensated. So the price goes up from PC to PC prime, but they're given enough money such that they are able to consume a bundle, we'll call it bundle C, that is on the original indifference curve. That means the price goes up from PC to PC prime, but they're given enough money so that they can buy a bundle of goods that is on the original, so the first, this dark brown indifference curve 1, we'll say. So they're able to achieve the same amount of utility. They're able to achieve the same amount of utility because they're given enough income to compensate them for the increase in the price. Okay, so that's what this light blue line represents. I'm going to call this L. I'm going to put a squiggle on it, or a tilde, or a squiggle. This is going to be the budget line squiggle. This is the budget line that they would face if their income was allowed to increase from the original income of I up to, if their income could increase from I up to I tilde, or I squiggle. I gotta fit this in here. Okay, so if their income was allowed to increase, they were compensated. We'll use that language. They were compensated. They were given additional income so that instead of having income I, they now have income tilde, or income squigs. If they were given enough income to compensate them for the reduction in price so that they could choose a bundle on the same indifference curve, so they achieve the same amount of utility at bundle C as with bundle A. If we allow that, this allows us to see the pure substitution effect. We can see the pure substitution effect. So let me illustrate this. I'm going to do some erasing here. Allow me to erase this so that I can illustrate some things. So at this bundle C, they're going to choose a new C star. All right, now this is how we can illustrate the income effect versus the substitution effect. So now I'm going to illustrate the substitution effect using this light blue color, and I'm going to illustrate the income effect using, I'm going to use a green for this, for the income effect. And then I'm going to use, let's see, I'll use pink for the total effect. So the income effect plus the substitution effect equals the total effect. So the total effect of a price change is composed of the income effect and the substitution effect. And so I'm going to illustrate the total effect with pink. All right, so here we go. What we're going to do, we're looking at how does the effect of a price change affect demand. Okay, so C star here, this brown C star, this is the original consumption. This is how much they consumed at the beginning. Now I want to know, if price goes up from PC to PC prime, how does that affect demand? Well, so let's illustrate the total effect. The total effect is the difference between the original C star and what they move to after the price increases. Okay, so this is the total effect here in pink. Well, how do I differentiate between the substitution effect and the income effect? Well, the substitution effect I will illustrate by looking at the effect of a compensated price change on demand. Why is that? If the price changes, but you're given enough income to compensate for the price change, then there is no income effect. That means there's only a substitution effect. That means if I look at the bundle that I've illustrated here with this light blue line, I look at this bundle C. So if I look at the bundle C here, if I look at the bundle C, this is going to show me the pure substitution effect. It's going to show me the pure substitution effect because they have been given enough income to compensate them. And so there is no income effect. All right, so if I look at the C star, the substitution effect here is the difference between the original C and the C star, the amount of coffee that they would consume when the price increases, but their income has been compensated. All right, so the difference between the dark brown C star and the light blue C star, that is the substitution effect. You can see that when the price increased, they reduced their consumption of coffee, and they reduced their consumption of coffee just because coffee has become relatively less attractive now that it is more expensive. That's the substitution effect. Well, what's the income effect? The income effect is the rest of the effect. So the income effect is the total effect. The income, we can write it this way. Let's do this. The income effect is the total effect. It's the total effect minus the substitution effect. So it's the rest of the effect. It's all the effect that isn't accounted for by the substitution effect. So here we can see the income effect. So this, what I've illustrated to you here, is an example of the impact of a price change on a normal good. The substitution effect is always negative. So here it's negative. What do I mean by negative? That means that as the price goes up, consumption goes down. So as the price of coffee goes up from PC to PC prime, the consumption of coffee goes down. All right, so it's a negative effect. It reduces demand. And the substitution effect is always negative. It means if the price of coffee goes up, I always want to substitute away from coffee. So that means my demand for coffee will go down because of the substitution effect. And in this case, I'm dealing with a normal good, so the income effect is negative. Why is it negative? Well, when the price goes up, I effectively have less income. And so if income is going down, then demand for a normal good would go down. That means the effect of both effects are negative, and we result in a larger total effect, which you can see here in pink. All right, so that is a detailed illustration of the effect of a price change. That price change includes an income effect, and it includes a substitution effect. On a normal good, the income effect is negative. The substitution effect is always negative, whether it's a normal good or not. Substitution effect is always negative. If it's a normal good, then the income effect will be negative. If it's an inferior good, the income effect will be positive. So let me illustrate that. I'm going to draw the same graph, but now I'm going to do the graph for an inferior good, and I will illustrate what that looks like. All right, so let's erase everything, start fresh. All right, same graph. So we start off with, let's say we start off with this bundle, okay? I'm sorry, with this budget line, PC, and then we're saying that the price is going to increase. So the price of coffee increase to PC prime, okay? And PC prime is a higher price than PC. Okay. And at the original budget line, I pick bundle A, or the agent picks bundle A. Okay, and what we want to do here is I want to illustrate what it looks like if I have an inferior good. All right, so first let me illustrate this. Let's illustrate the substitution effect by drawing the budget line in the situation in which they are compensated. Their income is compensated for, their income increases to compensate them for the increase in price. Okay, so let's do this. All right, and so here is bundle C. All right, I'm gonna erase this for now to do a clear illustration. Okay, so Here is the quantity consumed at bundle A. Here is the quantity consumed at this kind of substitution effect only. Okay, so here we see the substitution effect. Substitution effect here. So this is the substitution effect. It is negative. It's always negative. It's always negative. Okay, but now the question is, what would it look like if demand, if this good was if the good was an inferior good? If the good is an inferior good, that means that the income effect is actually positive. Because when the price goes up, your effective income goes down. All right, let's just illustrate this. Thinking back to elasticity of demand. All right, if you have an inferior good, that means that as income goes up, demand goes down. All right, so if you have an inferior good, as income goes up, implies demand goes down, which means the alternative would be true. As income goes down, demand goes up. Okay, so let's illustrate that. So here, let's imagine someone's preferences are like this. Let's see, is that going to work? That's not going to work. Sorry. I'm going to put, let's say someone's in different curve is like this. All right, so when price goes up, they choose bundle B. As price goes up, they choose bundle B right here. And so here, this is, it's still too close. Sorry, guys. Wow. All right. All right, there we go. Okay. Okay. So when price goes up, they're going to choose a new bundle. And so let's say, draw it on this indifference curve. Here it is. Here's the new bundle. All right, so they're going to choose bundle C star. Okay, so they're going to choose bundle B. You can see that at bundle B actually, so bundle B has less cups of coffee than bundle A, but it has more cups of coffee than bundle C. So let's draw our total effect. Our total effect is the difference between bundle C, the dark brown, I'm sorry, the number of cups of coffee that we choose on the original bundle A. All right, so it's C here. The total effect is this difference. So this is the total effect. So then how do we know what the income effect is? The substitution effect is the difference between the original C star and the light blue C star. The income effect is from the light blue C star up to the brown C star. And so the income effect, I'll illustrate it using the chart, is positive. Total effect is negative. Total effect is negative. Substitution effect is negative, but the income effect is positive. Okay, this is actually a little bit difficult to see. I'm going to redraw this real quick, giving us more space. All right, I'm going to draw this real quick. I'm not going to label a ton of things. Bundle A. Bundle B. Okay. Man. Okay. All right, so here's bundle C. We got to move this. Sorry, this is it can kind of be hard to illustrate this. This, I think, is going to be a lot clearer. Here we go. This is going to be a lot easier. All right, so here we go. This is the amount of coffee that we buy in the original bundle. This is the amount of coffee that we buy because of the substitution effect. This is how much cups of coffee that the agent would buy if, when the price increases and they're given enough money to compensate them for that increase in price. And then this is the number of cups of coffee that they will buy if they're not given enough income to compensate them for the increase in price. All right, so the total effect is from here to here. So here's the total effect, and it is negative. That means as the price goes up, demand goes down. The total effect is composed, we can write this, the total effect is composed, the substitution effect plus the income effect. All right, so the substitution effect is from the original bundle to the bundle that they would purchase when the price increases, but they are given enough money to compensate them for the increase in price. That's the substitution effect, and that is negative. It's always negative. The income effect for an inferior good, right? Remember, so for an inferior good, the income elasticity of demand is negative. That means as income goes up, demand goes down, which means the alternative as well. As income goes down, demand goes up. All right, so the income effect is the difference between the blue C star and the light blue. This is the income effect, and it is actually positive. All right, so this is for an inferior good. This is an inferior good. Substitution effect is negative. Substitution effect is always negative. For an inferior good, the income effect is positive. The total effect is negative. The total effect being negative, total effect is negative. That is the law of demand. That means that when the price goes up, demand for the good will go down. Even if it's an inferior good, when the price goes up, the net effect on demand is negative. When the price of coffee goes up, the demand for coffee goes down. Even if coffee were an inferior good and the income effect was positive, the total effect on demand is negative. All right, that was what we think of when we think of the law of demand. When the price goes up, demand goes down. Okay, whether it's a normal good or an inferior good. All right, now as I've pressed on this, the idea that when price goes up, demand goes down, that's the law of demand. I'm harping on that, I'm pressing on it. You might notice that there could potentially be a situation. I mean, just imagine, just hypothetically speaking, imagine a situation in which the income effect, in which you have an inferior good, okay, you have an inferior good where the income effect is so large, it's positive, and it's so large that it's actually bigger than the substitution effect, and it were to create a situation in which the total effect was positive. That would violate the law of demand. That would be a situation in which the price of a good goes up and demand for that good then goes up. That would violate the law of demand. Okay, well, I'm going to show you what that looks like in theory right now. That's what we call a Giffen good. A Giffen good. A Giffen good is a situation in which the total effect is positive. Total effect is positive. Let me illustrate what that would look like. It's kind of a very interesting breakdown here. So let's just kind of repeat our graph. So we're saying that price goes up, right? So this is the budget line. So here's the budget line that corresponds to PC prime. Here's the budget line that corresponds to PC, okay? PC prime is larger than PC, so PC prime is greater than PC. So price goes up. So when price goes up, budget line shifts in. All right, imagine that I have a situation. I'm going to change this line to just make it easier for me to illustrate here. Imagine I have a situation like this. All right, here's PC prime. And here's my preference. Here's my preference, my original preference, A. And then to illustrate the substitution effect, I draw the compensated line here. All right, PC prime. All right, so here's my bundle C. All right, so here's C star. Here's C star. Okay. So substitution effect right here. Substitution effect. Substitution effect. Always negative. Okay. But now imagine that when the price goes up, my preferences are such that I choose a new bundle B here. So here's my C star. What is the total effect? The total effect is an increase. The total effect is an increase in demand. Even though the price of coffee just went up, the total effect is positive in this illustration. The substitution effect is negative. Remember, the substitution effect is always negative, which means that the income effect is always the difference between these two. The income effect is highly, highly positive. So it means a Giffen Good. So a Giffen Good is a special case of an inferior good, where let's just keep black, where the income effect, remember, because it's an inferior good, the income effect is positive, where the income effect is greater than, and let's say the absolute value of the income effect is greater than the absolute value of the substitution effect. So the substitution effect is negative. But we're saying that the income effect is a larger effect than the substitution effect, which would imply, so this would imply that the total effect is positive, right? So let's illustrate that up here. Total effect is equal to substitution effect plus income effect. So imagine a situation in which the substitution effect is negative. It's always negative. But you have an inferior good, and it's so inferior that the income effect is huge. It's positive because it's inferior good. It's positive, but this effect is larger than this. Income effect is larger than the substitution effect, such that the total effect is positive. This is called a Giffen Good. Typically, we think that if Giffen Goods really only exist in theory. However, in class, we will read and discuss a paper in which researchers present evidence for the existence of Giffen Goods, or what we might call, might use a different term, we might refer to Giffen behavior. So Giffen behavior would be where someone, where a person, an agent, increases their demand for a good, their demand in response to a price change. Okay, to be given behavior. That means a person increases their demand for a good in response to a price change. All right, so that's given good or given behavior. We will talk about that in class. Thank you very much. Have a great day.